A federal appeals court in New York today ruled that the NSA's bulk collection of millions of Americans' phone records is illegal. In a stunning 97-page opinion, Judge Gerard Lynch described the program as unprecedented and unwarranted. According to the New York Times, it is the first time a higher-level court in the regular judicial system has ever reviewed the program. Since 2006, it has been repeatedly approved in secret by a national security court. The case was brought by the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. The existence of this program, the bulk collection of telephone metadata, was first disclosed in 2013 by former NSA contractor Edward Snowden. Today's ruling, which was unanimous, comes as Congress is debating whether to end, replace, or perhaps extend the metadata program, which is part of the Patriot Act. The judges opted not to end the program while Congress decides its fate. The program is set to expire on June 1st. Following today's ruling, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and other Republicans defended the program and pushed for its reauthorization.
According to the CIA, had these authorities been in place more than a decade ago, they would likely have prevented 9/11.
Why in the world would we think about rolling back the tools that are the only tools that put us post 9/11 versus pre 9/11?
One day, I hope that I'm wrong, but one day there will be an attack that's successful. And the first question out of everyone's mouth is going to be, why didn't we know about it? And the answer better not be because this Congress failed to authorize a program that might have helped us know about it.
Joining me now is Oregon Senator and member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Ron Wyden. Senator, thanks so much for joining me on a very, very big day. I know you've been involved in this issue for a long time, and you've called on the end of blanket surveillance, saying that it's either up to the president or Congress. Who is it going to be at this point, as you see it?
First of all, Congress now has the opportunity to once and tell me if the government knows that somebody called a psychiatrist 3 times in 36 hours, twice after midnight. That's pretty private information.
What about Mitch McConnell and some of the Republicans that took to the floor of Congress today? Mitch McConnell wants a reauthorization of the Patriot Act as is. Is he going to get it?
Not if I have anything to say about it, and I'm certainly going to pull out all the stops to once and for all end this misguided program. And listeners who heard those arguments on the floor about how important this was, I'd urge them to take a look at the report of the president's own advisory committee. And there were some people who signed that report who are not exactly soft on terror. And at page 104 of the report, your viewers will see that those experts said that this program was not of significant value in helping us win the fight against terror.
So then why are senators like John McCain and there are other folks that have also invoked the memories of 9/11? Senator McCain said today, people seem to have forgotten 9/11. Why are they still invoking that?
I have long felt that so often this debate is premised on the idea that if you're going to protect liberty, you have to give up your security. And I just don't buy that for a second. We have, through the Warren process, and particularly through emergency authorizations, when the government feels that there is a threat to the well-being of the American people, the government can really move in a hurry. But that's very different than dragnet surveillance. What the court said today is that dragnet surveillance was illegal. And the reality is, I've been warning about this for years. I've been saying, did it on the floor of the United States Senate, when the American people find out that there is a big gap between what they think is in the Patriot Act and what is the secret interpretation, they're going to be very angry. They have been, and today the court said that that secret program and secret law is illegal.
Senator Edward Snowden is in large part the reason why this case was brought to court. Should this exonerate him, at least in name?
My view is that having a public debate on this has been long overdue, and that was what I tried to start with my talk on the floor of the United States Senate. I do think it would have been a lot better if that debate had been started by the intelligence leadership, In fact, the intelligence leadership didn't do it, and when I asked them at a public hearing, the director, I said, does the government collect any type of data at all on millions of Americans? The director of national intelligence said no, and that was false.
Do you think that James Clapper should step down? He's the official you're referring to.
That's a judgment for the President of the United States. He makes those calls.
Senator Ron Wyden, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Joining
me now is journalist Glenn Greenwald, who received a Pulitzer Prize last year for his reporting on the NSA. Glenn, thanks for joining me again. A really big day, an issue you've been very, very, very involved in. I have to ask, because of Edward Snowden's involvement in all of this, have you spoken to him about the decision by this New York federal court?
I have, and he is thrilled about it. I think it's really important to note. I found it notable that you just asked Senator Wyden whether this vindicates Mr. Snowden, and he evaded your question completely. It is true that Senator Wyden has gone around for many years trying to start a debate, but he didn't tell the American people about what the government was doing, so we couldn't debate it. It took Edward Snowden to come forward, and he came forward in large part because he heard Director Clapper, the senior U.S. national security official, tell the Senate and the American people falsely that the government was not doing exactly the program that the court today said was illegal. So to have an appellate court, the first time an appellate court has looked at the legality of this program, come out and decisively and unanimously say that it's illegal, of course, is very gratifying.
How confident are you that either the executive branch or the legislative branch are going to act on this?
Well, in some sense, they need to act on it now because there's a court ruling that essentially says the program is illegal, and that although they're not stopping the program, they're giving Congress an opportunity to stop it on their own. If they don't stop it, there's going to be this court ruling in place if they don't reauthorize it. And there's also the question which the court raised about whether this is even constitutional at all, whether the Congress even could authorize it if they wanted to, or whether it would be a violation of the First and Fourth Amendment. And the court seemed to suggest there's at least very serious grounds for believing it would be unconstitutional. So I think you already had momentum to seriously reform the Patriot Act to at least significantly modify this program, if not end it. And I think this court decision will only fuel that.
What do you think this means? I mean, it doesn't stop here, right? I mean, there are proposed further actions down the line from two branches of government. But what do you think it means as far as further legal challenges regarding the NSA surveillance programs?
It's hard to overstate, Alex, how important the Second Circuit is in the federal judiciary for other courts. It's probably the most important court right after the Supreme Court, along with the D.C. Circuit. And also the judges, all three judges, are appointed by Democratic presidents, two by President Obama, one by President Clinton. And what's amazing is just how aggressive the ruling is in rejecting the Justice Department's arguments one after the next. It says that the plaintiffs have standing to sue because the U.S. government is collecting everybody's communication data, and therefore the plaintiffs are among those. And it says very kind of in an extreme way that the Obama administration's interpretation of the Patriot Act is unprecedented and unwarranted. That as extreme as the Patriot Act is, not even the extreme Patriot Act justifies a policy this radical. And I think it's going to have a huge impact on how litigation proceeds from this point forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a federal court to say that what the government is doing is illegal, they didn't rule on the unconstitutionality of it, but to say that what the government is doing is illegal would seem to mandate some action. And I wonder, do you think James Clapper's days are numbered as the head of the Director of National Intelligence?
To me, the question that you asked is probably the most stunning part of this entire episode. We know with certainty that the senior national security official in the United States government lied to the American people and to the Senate. And not only did he deny that there was a program that the NSA was doing and denied its existence, this program has now been declared by the federal court to be illegal, which means he was lying and hiding a program that was against the law. If that doesn't get you fired by the Obama administration, let alone prosecuted, what does? I mean, if that's not a firing offense, then nothing is.
Do you think, Glenn, let me ask you one more question. In terms of Snowden, who is still overseas, do you think this brings him back home?
It should. I mean, if you think about what a whistleblower is somebody who shines a light and discloses to the public something that the government is hiding and shouldn't be hiding, that at least there's a good argument to make is an example of wrongdoing. And now you have not just a federal judge who last year already said the program was unconstitutional likely, but a federal court, appeals court, saying that it's illegal. How can anybody say that we would be better off if Edward Snowden had just kept quiet and let us all remain ignorant of this spying program that a federal court has now said is illegal? It's classic whistleblowing. I think he deserves our national gratitude, not a life in prison.
Glenn Greenwald, thank you as always, my friend. Thanks for your time.